The Russo-Crimean Wars were fought between the forces of Muscovy and the Tatars of the Crimean Khanate in the 16th century for the control of Volga River region. In the 16th century, the wild steppes area in Russia was exposed to the Tatars' raids. During the wars, Crimean Tatars invaded central Russia and devastated Ryazan, burned Moscow and took 150,000 Russians as captives. However, next year were Tatars defeated in the Battle of Milordy. Later, the Tatar raids continued and the Crimean Khanate was invaded several times and finally conquered in late 18th. Tatars eventually lost their influence in the region, and Muscovy, after annexing that territory, extended its realm southward closer to the northern Caucasus and Caspian Sea. The conflict surfaced soon after the establishment of the Muscovy's buffer state Kashim Khanate and domination of Moscow in the Moscow-Kazan Wars of the late 15th century. History. The Crimean Tatars' invasions of Russia began in 1507, after the death of Moscow's Grand Duke Ivan III, when the Crimean Khanate attacked the Russian towns of Belev and Kozlozh. In the 16th century, the border of the wild steppes was near the city of Ryazan, near the Oka River, a tributary of the Volga, and close to the Yelets River, a tributary of the Don River, near Sosna. The main path to Moscow was the Muravsky Trail, going from the Crimean Isthmus of Perekop up to Tula between the basins of the Dnieper and Seversky Donets rivers. Penetrating for about 100 to 200 kilometers into Russian territory, the Tatars would turn back only after extensive looting and kidnapping. Captives were sent to the Crimean city of Kafur to be sold. Every spring, Moscow mobilized up to 65,000 soldiers for border service. The defensive lines consisted of a circuit of fortresses and cities to protect from invasions by the Nogai horde in the region between the Volga and Irtysh rivers. The Volga cities of Samara, Tsaritsyn, and Saratov were founded. The Russian population in the border regions suffered heavily from these invasions. This depopulation, in combination with the inability of Russian settlement in southern regions where the climate was more conducive to agriculture, hindered Muscovy's social and economic development. The most dangerous invasions occurred in 1517, 1521, 1537, 1552, 1555, 1570–72, 1589, 1593, 1640, 1666–67, 1671, and 1688. 1570. In 1570, the Crimean Tatars horde terribly devastated the Ryazan borderland of Muscovy, only meeting weak resistance. 1571. In May 1571, the 120,000-strong Crimean and Turkish army led by the Khan of Crimea Devlet I, and big and small Nogai hordes and troops of Circassians, bypassed the Serpukhov defensive fortifications on the Oka River, crossed the Ugra River and rounded the flank of the 6,000-man Russian army. The sentry troops of Russians were crushed by the Crimeans. Not having forces to stop the invasion, the Russian army receded to Moscow. The rural Russian population also fled to the capital. The Crimean army devastated unprotected towns and villages around Moscow, and then set fire to suburbs of the capital. Due to a strong wind, the fire quickly expanded. The townspeople, chased by a fire and refugees, rushed to northern gate of capital. At the gate and in the narrow streets, there was a crush. People went in three lines, went on heads one of another, and top-pressed those who were under them. The army, having mixed up with refugees, lost order, and General Prince Belsky died in a fire. Within 3 hours, Moscow burnt out completely. In one more day, the Crimean army, sated with its pillage, left on the Ryazan road to the steppes. Contemporaries counted up to 80,000 victims of the invasion in 1571, with 150,000 Russian taken as captives. Papal ambassador Poseban testified of the devastation. He counted in 1580 no more than 30,000 inhabitants of Moscow, although in 1520 the Moscow population was about 100,000. See also Fire of Moscow. 1572. After the burning of Moscow, the Crimean Khan, Devlet Duray, supported by the Ottoman Empire, invaded Russia again. In 1572 the Tatars and the Turks again invaded Russia, however, this time they were repelled in the Battle of Milordy. In July-August, the 120,000-strong horde of Devlet Duray of Crimea was defeated by Russians led by Prince Mikhail Vorotinsky and Prince Dmitry Kvorozhinin. After 1572, later, the Russian expansion turned to the Black Sea region and Crimean Khanate was invaded several times in the 18th century and finally conquered during the Russo-Turkish Wars. Incomplete list of Tatar raids. This list does not include raids into Poland, Lithuania. A longer list can be found in Ru. 1465. Crimea attacks the Great Horde to prevent it from raiding Russia and disrupting the northern trade. 1480. Great Stand on the Ugra River. 1507 and 1514. Raids led by Tatar nobles so the Khan would not officially break peace. 1521. Khan and 50,000 men cross the Oka at Kolomna and ravage outskirts of Moscow for 2 weeks. C. 1533. Abatis defense line about 100 kilometers south of the Oka. 1533–47. Some 20 large raids on the frontiers. 1541. Crimean Khan crosses Oka on rafts under covering fire from Turkish guns. 1555, 1562, 1664, 1565. Khan leads large armies into Muscovy. 1556–59. Russians and Zaporozhians raid the Black Sea coast 4 times. 1564. Ryazan Posad burned. 1571. Russo-Crimean War Moscow burned. 1572. Battle of Milordy, vital battle of the war. Tatars stopped growing to the north, then started to retreat. 1591. Raid reaches Moscow. 1591. Artillery stops raid at Kolomenskoye on the bank line. 1592. Suburbs of Moscow burned while Russian troops were away fighting Swedes. 1598. Crimeans stopped by bank line, withdraw and sue for peace. 1614. Nogai raids within sight of Moscow. During the time of trouble so many captives were taken that the price of a slave at Kaffa dropped to 15 or 20 gold pieces. 1618. Nogais release 15,000 captives in peace treaty with Moscow. 1632. Force from Livni ambushed by Tatars and Janissaries. 300 killed and the rest enslaved. 1632. 20,000 Tatars raid south of lines because troops were shifted for Smolensk War. 1633. 30,000 Tatars cross Abatis and bank lines. Thousands of captives from Oka region. 1635. Many small war parties south of Ryazan. 1637, 41–43. Raids by Nogais and Crimean nobles without permission of Khan. 1643. 600 Tatars and 200 Zaporozhian Cossacks raid near Kozlov. 19 killed, 262 captured. 1644. 20,000 Tatars raid southern Muscovy, 10,000 captives. 1645. 6,000 captives. C-1650. Belgorod line pushes Russian forts 300 kilometers south of the Abatis line. C-1680. Izium line. Russian forts within 150 kilometers of Black Sea. 1687–89. Crimean campaigns. Attempt to invade Crimea fails. 1691–92. Several thousand captives from near Izium line. 1769. Winter raid into New Serbia. Prisoners by the thousands. 1774. Crimea Russian vassal. 1783. Crimea annexed by Russia.